doesn't say what he thinks people want to hear from him. And to me, I know everything that he's done for the black communities, and I stand behind him.
Beautiful.
100%. I'm not only a Trump supporter, I am a Trump lover. And for the
including everybody in the black community, should just be all fine and dandy with how things have turned out?
I do not. I think that I have heard more from black people that they're not willing to just cave over and vote for the Democratic Party this time around. I think that poll is very telling. This is the first time, at least since I've been eligible to vote, where I've seen 20% support from African Americans for a Republican presidential candidate. So Donald Trump's support among African Americans has actually increased compared to where it was in 2020. And I think the Democratic Party should be very concerned about this. I think this idea that Donald Trump is scary, and I'm just not convinced that that message about Donald Trump is going to work with black voters this time around in 2024 the way that it did in 2020.
So is Blacks for Trump a real thing? Guys, this right here is going to be one of the very, very, very few pure political videos that I make from now going forward. I don't do these very, very often anymore. I mostly stick to the culture. However, I do got to give you guys some serious insight on what could be an actual honest-to-God phenomenon, meaning that it could actually happen. But I think we all need to be realistic about, is it true or is it not true? So as many of you guys know, Trump got indicted in Georgia. He was arrested. He went in there, turned himself in, all that type of stuff. A couple of weeks ago, all that stuff. And, of course, a lot of people went out there and made a bunch of TikToks. They made a bunch of videos saying that they're more than likely going to be supporting Donald Trump in 2024. All these people, by the way, were, in fact, people of color. They were all black. So it makes you wonder, exactly how important is that voter base to the Republican Party? Would it actually help out in the future? Would it actually help them win 2024? Well, I went and did some actual digging, some actual number crunching. I went to NBC Swing the Election, just good old-fashioned scenarios. I don't believe it is gospel or anything like that, and we'll get to that information here soon. And I'll show you if it actually really and truly makes a bit of a dent going into 2024. Now, before I go any further and show you some of the things that, quite frankly, we've seen, which, by the way, you'll probably see some more of a Sab there, even though she's actually on the left. I'll be talking more about what she's got to say here in a second, kind of giving some additional commentary. Then I'll come to the data, and then I'll come to the actual TikToks once again and give you guys my final thoughts on this. But this video, of course, is going to be coming out on Wednesday. It's going to be a part of 3 videos that are going to come out tomorrow. The reason why is obviously the scheduling. I'm going to go ahead and try to lean into that one video every other day, but then multiple videos on certain select days in the week. Wednesday just happens to be the day where more videos come out. So let's go ahead and dive into this. The general consensus is that the minute that the mugshot of Donald Trump was released, black people would begin to empathize. Well, I don't think it's black people per se. I think it's mostly black men, meaning that a lot of black men saw this and they immediately began to associate themselves with somebody who's being charged by the state. Now, I've already given you guys my thoughts on this. I've already told you where it was that it was actually BS. I've also told you and explained in previous videos why is this type of stuff more than likely will not stand, especially on appeal. And I also explained to you guys why it was that only impeachment and impeachment with conviction was actually a remedy in this case to take out a president, which, by the way, also seems to suggest that unless Joe Biden gets fully impeached and actually gets convicted, we more than likely are not going to see him be punished for his crimes. I need to go ahead and be realistic. I already know that some of these takes are not popular. But then again, at the same time, I have to give you what I really and truly feel. I have to be 100% honest with you, like I always am. Part of the reason why it is such a hit and miss ratio when it comes to my videos, that's okay with me. I don't care. I've got my own feelings, my own thoughts. I give you guys how I really and truly feel based upon what I'm seeing, based upon the numbers, and based upon the news that's out there at the time. But then you get someone like Sab here who goes on the Hill, which, by the way, they try everything they can to tell you that they are anti-establishment, but yet they only have leftist content creators up there like Jent Unger and Kyle Kulinski and those type of personalities there. Very, 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 very weird. Let's go ahead and roll this, and I'll come back on the other
with black voters this time around in 2024 the way that it did in 2020. And I say this because during 2020, that was a chance when we were like, well, we could have a Biden presidency and it could be different compared to how it was with Donald Trump. Well, now we've had both. We've had a Biden presidency and we've had a Trump presidency. And a lot of African-American voters feel that economically their life is not improved and it's actually become worse under Joe Biden presidency. So I think that the Democratic Party should be very concerned because they cannot win without African American support. And this could turn the page, I think, in reference to, we look at electoral politics and where people stand, African Americans stand in reference to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. So we could see a change here. I'm not sure that any changes that he makes right now would actually change people's minds, for the people who said that 20%, for example, that said that they support Donald Trump. And the reason why I say that is because this isn't just about Joe Biden. This goes back to other Democrat presidents that have not fulfilled their promises and have not tried to help the Black community. That includes Barack Obama, who was a big disappointment for a lot of African Americans in this country in reference to where he stood with helping people in the Black community. Joe Biden really doesn't have a Black agenda. And I think that's important for people to understand. It's one thing when you're running for president, you make these promises and then you don't fulfill them. And the Democratic Party, for a long time, they have pandered to the Black community. When Black people are asking for certain policies to be passed, they say the right rhetoric when they're running their campaigns, but once they're elected, they ignore the Black community. In fact, I feel like we're the only group where the Democratic Party actually panders this much to, and they just don't fulfill these promises. So it was only a matter of time that eventually Black people are going to look at both parties, and I think they should look at every party and independent candidates as well and say, is this really working for us? So I think going forward, it may be a little bit too late for a Biden presidency, because we saw this with Joe Biden, we saw it with Barack Obama, we saw this with Bill Clinton. How much longer are Black people supposed to wait to get some type of concessions from
Sab is very, very much on the left. Occasionally, I will use some footage from another leftist content creator. Usually, I'll use maybe Jimmy Dore every now and again, because he's the only one who talks to people like Sab and all the others. Of course, you've also got the real true scumbags, which the vast majority of them are, by the way. Lance, of course, the serfs. You know, I'm not even going to get too far into that. I don't really like these people, but still at the same time, though, you've got to give credit to somebody, especially the fact that a broken clock is even right twice a day. Sab is somebody who, by the way, was already getting fed up with the Democratic Party. There was a whole thing where Jimmy Dore had done a complete total, I want to say it was an hour-long reaction to some stuff that she had said about the Democratic Party as a whole, which, by the way, I'll try to link that in the description box for you guys if you're interested in watching it. But here is the thing that you need to understand. A lot of people are looking at the situation and they're saying to themselves, you know what, man, these people really and truly are not doing for us. They've got they've got the Senate, they've got 51 senators. They, at one point in time, had a House majority. That was the last cycle, which really wasn't much of a cycle. They really didn't have the full majority because it takes 60 votes in the Senate to even get some form of legislation passed, where 51 is typically for budgets, typically for Supreme Court justices, which, by the way, that needs to be moved back up to 60, including budgets itself. Everything needs to be a 60-person vote, in my honest opinion, but then again, though, here we are. Fact of the matter is that she is speaking from a perspective that a lot of Black people, quite frankly, feel that the Democratic Party is not doing anything for them, and that, quite frankly, they should give up their vote. Now, really quick, I do need to go ahead and point something out before we go further and we go to these actual TikToks, and it is this. So, yeah, let me say data, my bad. I need to go ahead and point this out, okay? Many people believe that the Black vote became the solid Democrat vote during the 1960s. That's not exactly true. It actually started voting Democrat in the 1930s under FDR. A lot of this had to do with the New Deal package. A lot of it had to do with the economic policies of that, and they, for the most part, have stayed with the Democratic Party since then in much, much higher numbers. You would have figured after the Civil War that they would have completely ran away from the Democratic Party, especially given all the lynchings in the South and stuff at the time. Even though I'm a Southerner, I don't mind bringing this up. Of course, it is the past. That stuff no longer happens again, but obviously it was a much, much different time. Obviously, I'm going to acknowledge that. However, one thing I'm not going to do is come out here and beat the damn drum that most people say. Just keep screaming, slavery, racist. I'm not going to do that crap there, because that, believe it or not, is actually turning a lot of people off too, due to happening in the 1860s. Get the hell over it. Here's the thing, though. The people who Sab, I think, are talking to about are the people who, quite frankly, are tired of the system not exactly doing for them. They actually believe that the system has wronged them in some way, which, by the way, I don't think that the system should do for you. I personally think you should do for yourself. The system, like handouts, things like that, there should just simply be hands up, meaning a bit of assistance. I understand that Black people tend to be a little bit poor. I tend to see that they also, at the same time, tend to also have much, much worse living conditions, and obviously they're looking for some form of assistance, and yet in some cases I can understand where their mindset comes as a result of that. But at the same time, I also am very, very much a pure capitalist, and I also believe that you should be helping yourself. I just figured I'd go ahead and get that out there. But going back to the 1960s, that is actually a myth that people threw out there, that Lyndon Johnson, of course, had the old saying, I'll have them N-words voting for the rest of their lives or the next 300 years, whatever. That's true. He did do that. However, it's not like they really weren't voting Democrat before. They were actually already voting that back in the 1930s to the FDR New Deal package. That's really what started it. I think that LBJ just simply solidified it. But I do need to say one more thing, too, before I go any further. There's this great myth about the Southern strategy, Nixon's Southern strategy. That's actually a lie. It was called a Sun Belt strategy. You see, what Nixon wanted to do was he wanted to ensure that North Carolina and Virginia would go in 1968. What happened was you had a third-party candidate named George Wallace, a segregationist, who won the Deep South. Nixon decided to focus his efforts in on the Sun Belt, not just Florida and North Carolina and Virginia. I forgot to mention that earlier. But he also wanted to focus in on Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and Southern California primarily. And it's also included Nevada because it was still viewed to be a part of the Sun Belt. But obviously, that right there weighed in his actual thinking. So no, it was no Southern strategy or anything like that. Don't worry, I'll leave links in the description box for you. Now, with that right there being said, guys, let's go ahead and get to the actual data. Let me go ahead and hop behind the computer. Okay, guys, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave everything basically the same, all right? I'm going to leave the same turnout right where it is. You guys can probably see right here at 307 for Biden, 231 for Trump. This is based on the law of 2020's model. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to bring, this right here is, by the way, a bit of a pain, especially on an Apple, but I'm going to bring the black vote all the way up to about 16%. Just 16. Just going to double it based upon a much, much smaller turnout model. What do you get? You get 296. What states flipped? Well, just Georgia and Pennsylvania and then Michigan. Now, that's 3 states. It's pretty important. Now, here's an idea. That's at 57% turnout. What if the turnout is actually lower? Let's say we bring the turnout to 55%. It still stays at 296. Now, what if it becomes 18% of the black vote? By the way, he was polling at 20% in the Fox News poll. I don't buy that. Okay, I just don't buy anything from Fox. It's just the way it is. I just don't buy Fox News polls. 18%. Now you're looking at 306, which is exactly what he won the election by in 2016. He practically wins the same states that he won that particular cycle. However, let me go ahead and tell you what I think is a little bit more realistic. I also think that the college-educated white vote is going to be much, much smaller. So I'm going to bring it down to 69%. People don't feel like they have much of anything to vote for, but I'm actually going to give Biden a higher pot of the actual vote. 45% is all Trump gets here. However, non-college educated white, who by the way are the ones who are hurting the most, I'm going to bring them up to 58%. And I'm going to keep Trump's total at 69. Right there, he's still at 306 based upon the current electorate. So go ahead and increase this to 71%. What do you get? You get 310 electoral college votes. That's what you get. So New Hampshire would flip as well. Basically what I'm saying to you, and you can even screw around with Latino, because this right here, this number right here isn't even accurate for Latinos, because he actually got 36% according to David Shore's report. So let's just go ahead and increase this number to what Shore had gotten, which is 36%. And we're actually going to lower the turnout to 44%. So right now it's at 326. That means that he was able to add Minnesota, Nevada, and New Hampshire. By the way, a lot of models have, this is the model that a lot of people are going by. Now, let's say we lower 18% to 16% amongst blacks. You see, it still stays at 316. Not a whole lot's changed. Nevada and New Hampshire are the only two that flip. Okay, but still, though, Asians was at 27. Now, if you can actually increase Asian total to 36%, it wouldn't make anything in the Electoral College, but it would pad your overall vote and actually give you the popular vote. What's really funny about this, state of Virginia and a few others, they got so upset about the 2016 election, about Trump winning the election without actually winning the popular vote, that what they decided to do was pass laws saying we will pledge our Electoral College votes to the actual winner of the popular vote. Well, if Trump wins the popular vote and he didn't win Virginia, guess what? Virginia, you're officially now a Trump state by your own logic. One more thing needs to be mentioned. and I think this is very important. Cornel West. Cornel West is running also. Cornel West is probably going to bump Trump's numbers up whether you know it or not because he's aiming for mostly inner city blacks. So you're talking Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Detroit. You're talking about, what else? You're talking about, I don't know, Minneapolis, Atlanta, Georgia, possibly Richmond, Virginia. You see, with Cornel West out there, he's actually a bigger hindrance to the Democrats' chance of getting reelected than Donald Trump is. That's the real truth. And going back to what Sabby Sab says, that a lot of people don't seem to, a lot of people in the black community, they're probably looking at the whole race angle, and they're probably saying that this race is not going to work because even they've gotten tired of it. Yes, you've still got people out there screaming Trump is a racist, but then again, you got people out there screaming Scott Adams one. You got people screaming that I'm one. You got people screaming that you're one. It's something that, quite frankly, has desensitized the masses, and a lot of people just don't care at this moment in time. Now, with that being said, guys, let me go ahead and hop back in front of the camera. As you guys can see, in some scenarios, it obviously can, in fact, help out. And I also mentioned Cornel West. You see, Cornel West is actually a problem for Democrats going further because he primarily panders or caters to inner city blacks, especially those who may need some form of government assistance. Well, if you've got anywhere between 9 to 11%, and hell, even smaller, maybe 5% of the black vote that's somewhat jilted, and you got someone like Trump coming along and getting anywhere between 14 to 20% of black vote, especially black males, this right here could be a problem for the Democratic Party. You see, the Democratic Party, let's just put it this way here. They were able to turn a state like Virginia blue. They were able to, for the most part, get a state like Georgia to begin to turn blue. They've been trying to blue up Texas for a very long time. It's not worked out for them, and the demographic shift actually suggests that 2020 is the best they're ever going to get. But still, at the same time, everything is done on the electoral level. If you've got someone like, say, Cornel West taking away a certain portion of the vote, say, somewhere like a city like, say, Philadelphia or Pittsburgh or possibly Detroit, Milwaukee, I mean, hell, Minneapolis even, it makes it easier for someone like a Donald Trump to come in and peel off another section, as well as Hispanic vote, which, by the way, is also shifting much, much further to the right as well. And with overall white vote, especially non-educated, meaning the people who work in the unions, people who work, of course, let's just say it's the everyday jobs, the most important jobs, obviously auto mechanics, those who work in the service industries, that type of stuff there, then obviously the Republican nominee is going to stand a better chance of actually winning the election. With any form of actual fortifications, like we had in the Time Life magazine article in 2020, or the Time Life magazine article in 2021 told us all about, because obviously at some point in time they were eventually going to come out and tell us exactly how they did it, and of course it's still very, very shady and very underhand. Of course, YouTube has loosened the restrictions on talking about 2020, but still at the same time, though, I still like to try to keep things a little bit, let's just say, I still try to walk the straight and narrow about that. But then we get to the TikToks. We get to all the reactions, all the responses that are being made after the mugshot was released.
The black community is not fucking with Trump, you know what I'm saying? But when that PPP shit and all that shit came out, black people forgave him. Because
some say he's racist and tweets like a kid while overlooking all the good shit that he did. I'm ashamed of my president a little bit. I'd rather have the alpha male than
you guys want to argue it and say that everybody's voting Democrat and we love Joe Biden and Joe Biden 81 million votes my ass. The tides are turning. Check it out. We're all Mr. Trump. We got your back.
What is it about Trump
You know what? I'm going to tell you something right now. I was talking to my husband about it earlier, and when I really started educating myself and informing myself on Donald Trump, one thing that I'm passionate about is human trafficking, that especially of children. And when I really started digging into it, I saw that Trump also is a huge supporter. He donated recently $35 million to support human trafficked survivors. Yep. That really struck a chord with my heart. And so Amazing. When I started really looking into him, I'm about action, I'm not about words. Okay? I like the fact that he doesn't say what he thinks people want to hear from him. And to me, I know everything that he's done for the black communities, and I stand behind him. Beautiful. 100%. I'm not only a Trump supporter, I am a Trump lover. And for the
gang, that was just a montage of people saying Trump 2024. If you want to stick it to the system, vote for Donald Trump 2024. I got to lean, and I got to agree, and I also got to disagree with something. Number one, if you're going to be voting for a candidate, you need to be voting for that candidate because you really and truly believe in that candidate's message, or it's the right thing to do, or the situation in the country. I have, for the most part, held very steadfast on Trump 2024. I really and truly am holding his head steadfast on that. And of course, we've had issues with people out there saying that, you know, if you put somebody else besides Trump on the ballot, we probably won't show up and vote. In my case, it's a little bit different. I live in a state that requires me to go out there and vote because the governor's race is also in line as well. However, that does not mean that a state like, say, Ohio or Florida, or maybe a state like, say, Georgia, where you don't have the governor on the ballot because they're on the ballot in midterm years, that voter base does not show up and vote. This way it could actually cost the Republican nominee. Look, polls don't win elections. What wins elections is turnout, and it's looking to me like the 2024 election is probably going to be a much, much lower turnout election. And of course, a lot of people are saying it's going to be a high turnout. No. I don't care if Trump's on the ballot or not. It more than likely is not going to be a high turnout election because the Democratic nominee himself is not a very, very popular candidate. And ever since he's been in office, things have just completely gone to complete crap. You got a war in Ukraine, the price of gas is through the roof, the price of food is through the roof, inflation is crazy. You just had the situation in Maui where we can't find these children that may or may not have died. More, I hate to say it, but I'm kind of being, I'll put it this way here, on the Maui situation, I'm kind of keeping myself negative. Hopefully we can get some positive news, and hopefully these kids are all right. I want to be surprised. I want to witness a miracle. That's basically what I'm doing when I'm talking about that particular situation. But just about anything and everything has gone completely wrong, and the guy, quite frankly, his mind has turned completely to mush, and quite frankly, he can't talk. And now you've got the C-19 stuff coming back. Of course, Jill Biden, of course, just confirmed, has it again, even though these people are like double, triple, quadruple vaxxed. It's kind of crazy. The things that people have said was that we forgave him because he was giving us money, talking about Trump during the pandemic. I almost believe that in 2020, had the pandemic not occurred, I honestly believe that the African-American turnout would have been much, much lower, and that Trump would have gotten a much, much bigger piece of the pot. Remember, he got 12%, 11%, but it was actually double the vote that he got in 2016. So if the turnout had been low, he probably would have ended up with like 16 to 17% of the vote, but still it would have been inflated. If you're going to be voting for somebody, you need to be voting for somebody for the right reasons, not to just get some additional money. It may be the fact that people are looking that under Biden, the inflation is through the roof, so they figure, okay, I kind of need the government assistance, but yet at the same time, if we give you the government assistance, it's just going to make the inflation much, much higher, so therefore it's not going to help you. And I'm not saying this to stereotype anybody at all. I obviously know a lot of people of color who do in fact work, sometimes work 2 and 3 jobs at once. And in today's economy with the I'm talking the rampant inflation and the fact that people are not getting any more than 12 to 20 hours a week per job. They have to work a second job to obviously to make ends meet. And with the inflation going through the roof, $15 an hour does not exactly look, how do I say, it doesn't look like it's enough. A lot of people, by the way, who were advocating for $15 an hour minimum wage, I was telling them flat, the only thing that would happen is that the price of everything would go up. And of course, it would go up. And of course, everything has gone up, but it's mostly gone up due to inflation. Can you imagine if you had inflation with the natural price hike that would come with a $15 an hour minimum wage? I just figured I would throw that out there. But let me go ahead and end this video on this note. So here is what I think. I think what will happen is that in 2024, he'll get a higher overall amount of the black male vote. He'll probably get an additional few black female votes, and I think the overall turnout will not be that low, but it will be low enough. I would say it's probably going to be somewhere in between the 2016-2020 levels, meaning the number in between. I want to say it was right around 148 million people voted in 2020. My belief is that you're 156 million people voted in that election. I apologize. Roughly 137 million voted in 2016. I believe the voter turnout, if you factor in Cornel West, the possibility of maybe Bobby Kennedy Jr. possibly launching a third-party bid, which you need to watch out there because obviously we're coming up to a Democratic National Convention. It's going to be in Chicago. The crime, the inflation, all that type of stuff is going to cause a lot of social alienation, which, by the way, is already happening. You have the turnout machine guy in Trump, assuming that he, which, by the way, I personally believe he will be the nominee. I'll never be able to lock him up. They may be able to get some convictions, but the entire point behind the convictions is designed to make conservatives look at themselves in the mirror and say, do I really truly want to vote for this guy? They're trying to use the love of the law against us, but I don't think it'll work. Maybe on a very small minority, mostly the simps and mostly establishment figures. The thing is this right here. I would expect to see an increase in the vote, but an increase in the vote in what's probably going to be a smaller overall sample size. So I believe somewhere between 16 to 18%, mostly black males, that's probably going to be the number. And as you guys saw before, it may do enough to flip the state of Georgia, which, by the way, we would need. It more than likely would help flip the state of Pennsylvania, which we will more than likely need. And it may possibly help flip the state of Virginia back. But a lot of that also depends on the Virginia GOP, because Virginia has gotten blue. I mean, it's been blue ever since 2008. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and end this video on what I think the Republican Party should do, or at least Donald Trump. Focus in on married couples. Focus in on married couples. Focus in on black males. Focus in on Hispanics, especially males, Hispanic women. They think a lot more with logic rather than they do with emotion. Focus in on young males, because obviously I've done a video on this where it looks like young men are starting to become much more conservative, or much more conservative thinking. Focus in on the white working class, and focus in on mostly those in the city who are worried about crime. Focus in on that there, as well as Asians, and that right there should be enough to get you over for the time being, which should be at least enough to get you over the next election cycle. By the way, you're going to need anything and everything you can get to actually get over that, so make sure you guys actually put that in action. With that right there being said, guys, I'm going to halt this video now and go ahead and work on the other two for tomorrow. Make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section, and I'll see you guys later.